One checked in. I still have Wes Menzel from the zoning department. And I see we also have Sophia Holly. Good morning, Ms. Holly. Can you confirm that you are the applicant?
Confirmed. And good morning, everyone.
And you're an attorney representing the DJJ properties, is that right?
That's right.
Okay, fantastic. Then we have Jeff Schaefer on the line as well. Jeff, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you tell me who you're representing here today, or who party you're representing?
I'm representing Schaefer's Towing, DJJ Properties.
Do we expect anyone else to join us on the applicant owner side? Ms. Holly, are you expecting anyone else to join us, any other witnesses or clients?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and get started. I need to read through our hearing script. This is basically just cover the procedure for the hearing and then get into it. So this is the June 5th, 2024 session of the zoning hearing examiner docket. Again, my name is David Sturkey. I'm the zoning examiner for the city. Case before today is case number ZHUV240002. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and potentially opposing parties to testify and to offer and include evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and subject to the rules of the zoning hearing examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any potential opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows: the applicant, the applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent first presenting the case. For our purposes here today, Ms. Holly, I'll allow you as the attorney for the owner to really present to orient the presentation however you'd like. You can make some opening remarks. You can jump right into allowing Mr. Schaefer to testify. You can do that in sort of direct examination style, or you can just like give him the floor to speak about the project. Really, it's quasi judicial. So however you would like to orient your presentation is up to you. If there were anyone here from the public, they would have an opportunity to speak after the applicant has presented his case. I will hear from the zoning division of the planning department, and see that we also have the zoning administrator and the in-house who's joining us now as well. So I would ask Emily an opportunity to provide the testimony in addition to the staff report if they would like. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to this application, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to that testimony that was offered in opposition. But we do have a member of the public join us and testify in opposition. Ms. Holly, you will have an opportunity to cross-examine that person if you would like, but there is no cross-examination of any government speakers. Finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be effective in 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. Interrupt any speaker to ask questions or make comments. In the event of any technical difficulties with using technology, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly to the extent there are some feedback that prevents us from going forward this hearing. May continue or postpone your discussion. Okay. Last thing I need to do is just swear in all of our witnesses. So if you intend on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, asking any questions, and you are not an attorney, then the zoning code requires that I swear you in. So if that's you, you could raise your right hand. You have 1 answer out loud. You solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, Ms. Holly, are you ready to proceed?
I am.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for all your time on this. I was thinking about this case on the way in today, and this is the most complicated case I've ever worked on. And I'm not terribly young of a woman. This is a very complicated case. Thank you very much for Emily for her time in meeting with us. Thank you to Wes for his very thorough analysis. Between the staff report and our application, we're nearing 100 pages. I will not have us suffer through that. I want to hit the highlights, and I will have Jeff comment because this is his business, and he is really the individual who can talk about it. So Without further ado, my name's Sophia Hawley. I'm the attorney for DJJ Properties LLC, and I'm joined by Jeff Schaefer. He's the president of Schaefer Towing. Mr. Schaefer, have you reviewed the application that we submitted in relation to this matter?
Yes,
And to your knowledge, are the documents and attachments to it true and accurate to the best of your information and belief?
yes.
If you would just tell us a little bit about your business, and I'm going to go into the nitty-gritty with the zoning and the purchase, but tell us a little about your business, what you do, and your philosophies.
Thank you. Mr. Sturkey, Mr. Munzel, and Ms. Ayhouse, thank you for your time. Anybody else that I've missed on here, thank you for your time and your consideration on this. Sorry if I come off a little nervous here. This is my livelihood. I'm a fourth generation business owner. My great grandpa started it in 1936. In the 1960s, my father added the towing service to our business. He had 5 sons, 2 of us that are still in the business. My partner, Jim Schaefer. We've been towing all of our lives. I used to drive a tow truck to high school. It was one of my dad's dreams to operate for the city of Cincinnati. And one of the things you had to have was a lot in the city to be able to perform the rotations for the city police department. And we clean up the city roadways. You know, if a tractor trailer goes over and it's inside the tunnel and there's a mess there, products all over the place, we go out and we clean them up. We open the roads back up so everybody can basically get home to their families and go to their soccer games and go to the football games. And you know, we're the ones that clean up the roadways. And when there's an accident in the intersection of Beekman and Elmore, we go out and we pick up the vehicles and tow them back to our yard after a crash scene. You know, I took over this business when I was 24 years old. My father, my employer, and my best friend passed away, which was my dad. And I was kind of thrown into the loop of taking care of our mom and the rest of my brothers. And I didn't know too much about the business at 24. I knew how to work. I knew how to work a long day, and I knew how to put the hours in. I knew how to tow vehicles and trucks, but I didn't know the aspects of business, the ins and outs of the operation, the financial burden, the stress it puts on you. When my dad passed away at 52, I understand that. With that being said, we finally got a lot in the city in 2003. We purchased, put our application in for a sheriff's sale in 2003 and purchased this lot. We were put on police rotation right away. And we were, storing our vehicles there. And, I've been, I think, a pretty good community company down there. We sponsored the walk path for South Cumminsville. We financially put money towards having that built. I sponsor their picnic every year right around the corner from us on Beekman, whether that's buying the food or the pop or anything that goes along with it. I've always, helped them out. I've attended some of the community council meetings. I can't attend every one of them, but I have been there. I'm part of the community council down there as far as participating. I try to do everything by the book down there. I try to run a nice business. I have 28 employees that depend on me to keep this business running. Some of those live in the city of Cincinnati, some of those employees, I just look forward to, getting some sort of resolution and coming up with an idea of where we need to be to make this go and continue this business.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. That's a really good background on your business and your perspective. So I'm going to sort of take over now, and I'm going to guide everyone through some of the points that I think are helpful for Mr. Sturkey in making his decision. So let's talk about the prior use of the property and what it was like before you purchased the property. And one of the reasons this case is unusual is because there was a property sale in January of 2004. There was subsequent documentation and transfers that came later in 2004. The zoning code changed in February of 2004. So I don't think it's necessarily, it's not something that needs to be resolved as a matter of law at this hearing. However, it is an unusual factor. So what I would like to do is, if it's possible, share my screen because I have my application up. Is that possible, Mr. Sturkey? Okay,
Sure.
thank you. All right. Okay, so everyone should be seeing a copy of our application. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so let's start by going back to some of the prior use documents. So I'm pulling up a copy of a building permit from the city of Cincinnati, and this was issued in 1998. The owner is Edward Quiche with Quiche Construction, and it indicates that the property is being used as a contractor's yard. Mr. Schaefer, is that your understanding of how the property was used prior to you taking it?
Yeah, the Key's Construction did roadway construction and resurfacing and concrete work around the sidewalks. And when we purchased the property from the sheriff's sale, there was mounds of dirt and concrete and grass and all kinds of wood debris. And literally, it was approximately 6 foot high, probably by, I don't know, a football field long, something like that. Or, but we had to, dispose of all that debris. I think it was very misuse of property management for their part, because I think they were being sent notification over that property being so overwhelmed with what he was using it for. And he kept saying he was just keeping it as a stockpile. I think that's how he got by with it. I don't know, but
Jeff, thank you, Mr. Schaefer, and I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to provide background, and some of the points are just for illustrative purposes for Mr. Sturkey to make a decision.
Was it used as a residence at that time at all? Does there's dwelling units on here? So see, it's wrote in tractors yard, contractors yard. We know anything about that?
Mr. Sturkey, if you know I'm sorry, Mr. Schaefer, if you know the answer to that, was there a residence on the property?
No, the house that was on the property, Keith used that as an office.
And that was torn down, is that right?
Yeah, that actually caught fire. There was some sort of electrical fire, and the top half burnt pretty good, so we just had it removed.
Let's for illustrative purposes, I'm pulling up page 40 of the PDF of our application, and this is titled an existing zoning map for Quiche Construction, and it lays out the approximate area of the multiple parcels that make up the property before the zoning hearing examiner, and it indicates crosshatch area indicates area not included as contractor's yard, filling to grade only, chain link fence with slats. Does this map, do you have any reason to believe that this permit document isn't accurate as it was submitted, Mr. Schaefer?
Can you rephrase that? I'm sorry, Holly.
Oh, no, it's perfectly all right. But basically, I'm trying to get a little bit of background as to how the property was used before you got the property. And it looks like, based on this document, it was used generally as a contractor's yard prior to the zoning changes in 2004. And I'm just wondering if this document comports or follows what you believe to be the use of the property prior to you purchasing it. Does this look about right?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'd like to go now to, this is an environmental site analysis that was purchased by you. And this is also part of our application on page 46 of the PDF. Do you recognize this document, Jeff? Mr.
Yes,
Schaefer?
ma'am.
Okay, and I just want to bring attention to everyone that it's identified to Delhi Towing Incorporated, is this a business that you were affiliated with at the time of this environmental assessment?
Yes, ma'am. We still have Delhi towing.
Okay. And then I want to turn to page 47 of the PDF. It goes through some of the uses of quiche construction to sort of lay a background as to what this environmental assessment saw to be the case. When they did this assessment in 2003, the property is used for disposing scrap concrete and construction materials. There were several piles of old tires, some discarded automobile batteries, and several abandoned vehicles on the property. Does that follow about what you understand or recall the property being used for?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to flip to page 53 of the PDF, which is correspondence I had with Miss A House about the prior use of the property that I think is sort of helpful. And again, I don't think this is really gonna, there needs to be no legal determinations on this for purposes of this hearing, but I do think it's helpful to understand how the property was. This was correspondence with Miss A House regarding the pre-2004 zoning map of the area. And if you see the teal squares that are highlighted adjacent to each other, that's the bottom right-hand corner of the current Schaefer towing yard. And that it sort of shows how a lot of this property was previously M2 prior to the 2004 zoning map. So this is a public record that I just want to bring to the hearing examiner's attention. Let's now turn to the actual transfer of the property. I'm going to go to page 33 of the application. This is a sheriff's deed dated August 8th, 2003. And in the documentation of the sheriff's deed, it indicates that on the 8th of January, 2004, the sheriff, Simon L. Lice, Junior Sheriff, as aforesaid, did in pursuance to such notice expose said real estate to sale at public auction, ... to Delhi Towing Incorporated. So, Mr. Schaefer, that's your business, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it correct that on January 8th, 2004, you immediately started using the property for your towing business?
Yes, we were storing cars back then as soon as we purchased it.
And I don't think that this is necessarily, I've said this 3 times and I apologize for repeating myself. I don't think this is necessarily a fact that this entire case needs to rest on, but I do believe that the property was being used in some respect prior to the zoning change. And I'm going to bring up pages really quickly. So Mr. Munzel did I think, good job of pointing out, as I should have done, the use of aerials of the property from 2001 and also 96. So here's the property in 96. It looks like there was some storage then. I apologize, this is 2001. Here, is this 2001? Here's 2001. Here's 2001. You could see there was more storage of the things that were sort of described in the environmental report at that time. And then there's a nice picture. This is 2006. So this is after the property's purchased. This is after the zoning code's gone into effect, but sort of shows the use of the property. Okay, so we've talked about the prior use of the property before it was purchased. We've talked about the prior zoning to the extent it applies. We've talked about the transfer. The documentation has been thorough with respect to some of the points that the zoning hearing examiner can examine. When I first started working with Mr. Schaefer, he was surprised given the length of time that this case was proceeding forward and that he was being found to be in violation of the zoning code. I understand the position the city's coming from, and this is just a really unusual property. For this property, if we were starting up today and this was a new business, for it to go in this spot, I just don't think it would be financially feasible for the amount of zoning requirements that would need to be brought in, that would need to bring it up to complete compliance with zoning today.
So Ms. Holly, can I ask a quick question?
Of course you can.
Were you saying, were you suggesting there that this use existed prior to the implementation of the 2004 zoning?
So I think Ms. A House and perhaps Mr. Munzel has been following the tortured history of this case. So initially, after the notice of violation was sent, a appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals was filed. And one of the arguments raised is that our use is non-conforming. And some of those arguments are that entire appeal has been stayed. And I'm pleased to say that I don't believe that you need to make any determinations. And we're not waiving our arguments that it's non-conforming, but our position here is that this is an unusual property. It's a configuration of multiple lots. It used to be manufacturing. It's now the zoning is changed. It is unusual in the sense that nowadays you don't put manufacturing uses next to residential. But essentially we have a proposal as to ways that we can mitigate and come closer to the zoning code that will help support the city, but also permit the property owner to continue using their property. So,
But I'm sorry, are you saying this is currently in front of the ZBA?
it's stayed so that we can, in lieu of arguing our non-conforming use request, we can request use variances and special exceptions and all the manifold types of relief.
But the matter at issue in front of the ZBA that you said it stayed, is it like continued in progress or tabled? Is that what?
So Kevin Tidd as counsel is permitting us, has permitted to be completely stayed. We've not presented evidence. And I really hope I'm not coming across as combative. I don't want to be combative.
No, you're not at all. I'm just trying to understand the procedural posture here when you brought up the ZBA events.
It's an unusual one.
Gotcha. So instead of arguing that this is a legal non-conforming use because the use started before the existence of modern zoning code, you're coming in front of me to ask for relief to allow for the, just to go through the variance process to allow that. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Well, real quick, Ms. A House, what is the zoning division's position on the legal non-conforming use?
Yeah, and so the zoning division's position is that this is not a legal non-conforming use. And that argument, would be made in front of the zoning board of appeals and the appeal of the zoning orders being issued.
Why is it?
The records that we've seen are that the contractor yard is the last permitted use on the site. We have permits up to 2003 that show the use was a contractor yard at that time. And, I know the applicant has noted the sheriff's sale dated January 8th. But when we look at the records, the deed is dated the 18th of March, 2004, and the auditor notes the transfer date as August 4th, 2004, which are both after the current zoning regulations were adopted. And we have no records of any permission by the city to establish the change of use there after the current code went into effect. So that's the general basis for our, and so we are taking this as a new use, for the purposes of this hearing. If it was determined in the future that it's a legal non-conforming use, then we would run a different process for the expansion of that use.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. That helps clarify things in my head. I don't want to poison the well too much for the potential future argument in the ZBA, but I appreciate that background. Sorry for the interruption.
Please interrupt as you would be helpful as frequently as possible and as much as you want. And just as a point of sort of addition in terms of background, Mr. Schaefer went through the coordinated site review process. We've had a number of discussions with the city. It is our hope that we can get resolution here that would allow this, vital part of the Cincinnati community to continue doing its business in a way that is satisfactory to the city, and also keeping in mind that with respect to some of the points that requests there, we have a separate request, and we appreciate, and I know everyone here trusts the zoning hearing examiner will review all the evidence and come with a determination. I think that this property, it's just such a strange property for it to be 20 years old and here, although I understand completely the reasons for that. And I also appreciate there is a question of fact as to whether it's non-conforming, and that's not been resolved, and that's not before the zoning hearing examiner. So again, I appreciate both. Wes has been we've been emailing back and forth. Emily spent her share of time on this case, so I appreciate everyone's insight. All right.
When did the enforcement, I mean, when did the city officially recognize or notify Mr. Schaefer that he was out of compliance?
I believe, and Emily, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a couple of years. As we were internally as trying to figure out how to best approach this, and it's particularly with the use variance, as soon as I got the notification relating to that we could pursue a use variance, we submitted one, but then there were so many different facets of this property that needed to be reviewed. There was a recommendation that we go through the coordinated site review process. So it's been a couple years. I think it might have been 2022 when
there's a citation in the staff report, that references 2022. But Mr. Schaefer, is 2022 the first time you were made aware about a city that you were out of compliance with?
Yeah, that was the first. And believe me, if I'd known back in 2003 going into 2004 that I needed a towing variance, I would have applied for one. I never even heard of that. Not to say, it wasn't there, but I've never heard of that. I've tried to be in compliance with everything I do, and I would have applied for one, and I'm sure I would have had the city's blessing, because they were wanting to add a reputable company to their rotation, per the police chief Stryker back then in that time frame. And the city's been down there inspecting my yard almost every year to make sure we're in compliance with the lighting and the fencing and everything else with that. So the city impound unit actually comes down and surveys our property and make sure we're on the up and up with security and everything else, protecting people's cars when they have accidents. We've already had city council members down there cleaning out their cars, from a city accident. But yeah, we've been operating since 2000, for 20 years without any compliance notice.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
So I'm going to incorporate by reference the legal arguments and analysis in the application relating to the specific zoning relief that we're seeking, because I believe that states it better than, just because I could state it here. What I'd like to turn to is what Schaefer Towing is proposing to do to satisfy the zoning code and to make this a more harmonious use. Respond to the city's requested changes with respect to the ones that are easily workable with, the ones that we'd like clarification on, and one that we would like a modification on. So as the documents in the application indicate, there are several things that Schaefer Towing or rather DJJ Properties is happy to do and offers and proposes to do to help this property. And at the end of this, Mr. Schaefer, please let me know if you agree with them. So one of the things that they are proposing to do is remove their barbed wire fencing. This is something that as a tow yard, and with there being barbed wire in the area, the owner likes their barbed wire fencing, but we want to come to a resolution. And so they're willing to remove the barbed wire fencing, which will bring it closer to the code. They've also proposed curb stops on the property that will be between the residential and buffer yard. Are also proposing to install a drive aisle as well.
Could you, Sophia, if you still have control of your cursor there on the share screen, could you sort of point out where where these proposed additions are going to go?
Yes.
Property.
Yes, absolutely. So I actually have the page 10 of the staff report. This is a drawing by Vioxx and Vioxx. And if you can see my mouse here, we are proposing to add curb stops along this area. We are proposing to remove all the barbed wire, which I believe surrounds the perimeter. And we are also proposing to add this drive aisle, which is the dark gray shaded area, as well as a curb cut onto Dawson that is compliant with ODOT requirements. And we've submitted invoices relating to this, to the drive aisle and the curb cutting that amount to about $60,000 of investment to have that done. And then as part of the request from the city, one of the requests is that there be slats that are added. And I'm trying to recall specifically where that is in the application. There's a specific proposed area here. Let me try to find it, where the city's asked for slats to be added for screening. And we are okay with that. And the property owner will agree to add that screening onto the property at the specifically proposed area.
So is that slats in the chain link fence that to add buffering, is it just between the residential or is it not?
I believe it is just between the residential. Here we go. All right. So I believe the red marked area is the area that has been proposed by the city, and that's something that property owner is comfortable with. Mr. Schaefer, am I misstated anything? Do you agree with everything I said just now regarding the improvements?
Yeah, the apron that you mentioned, Dawson, was that Dawson or Llewellyn on the drive apron?
I believe that's Dawson.
Okay. And then to the south of that is all the West Fork Creek, which is pretty much tree line and, you know, shrubs and stuff. So there's
that. Gotcha. Yeah.
There's no residence back there behind there.
Is that a portion? It looks like in the images actually parcel lines that there's a finger or a driveway that goes out to Avenue directly from the lot. Is that so
the are you talking in Mr. Sturkey? Are you talking about in the center there? In the
yeah, right
okay.
there.
That used to be a railroad track. It crossed over West Fork Creek, went to the city has property right behind us, city maintenance, and then it goes towards West Fork, the sanitation department, you know, south of us. But a railroad track, and there used to be a train trestle right across the West Fork Creek, which the West Fork Creek dumps into the Mill Creek, and that runs all the way down from West Fork Road. But there used to be a railroad trestle.
Yeah, is that former railroad trestle? Is that, do you utilize that at all for access to the property?
We don't use that. It is access. It goes all the way back out to Dreamin. We don't use it. It's surrounded by tree line on both sides. It could be an access point at some time. And, you know, we thought of that when we purchased this, that, you know, that could be an access point at some, you know, at some time if you know, if it ever needed to be, but we don't use it.
Okay, but for now, it's going to be fenced off according to what we're seeing here.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Slab it.
Oh, there is a gate there, but we don't, like I said, we don't use it, but we could put slats all throughout there.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
With respect to the time that we would like to have these improvements done, I've seen 2 years as approval time, and the property owner believes that they could get it done in a year and a half, but they would like at least a year and a half and 2 years if possible to have these improvements done if it's acceptable and if it's approved. I think there's 2 remaining items that Mr. Munzel has proposed that we have comments to. One of them is the restriction relating to where towed cars are parked. Let me see if I can get this the correct map up. There's been a proposal that towed vehicles not be parked north of the proposed access drive. And that's something that we are comfortable with. Here's the image. Uh-oh, it's the wrong way. Let me see if I can rotate it so we're all on the same page. Okay, there we go. Much better. So there's a proposal, I believe, that there be no towed vehicles parked north of the access drive. And that's something that we're comfortable with, so long as the property owner can park their employee parking, customer parking, and equipment. There's certain equipment that's associated with towing that there's just not going to be space to park it elsewhere. As it currently stands, let's see if I could get a current. As it currently stands, there is parking of vehicles to the north of what will be the access drive, and the property owner can continue operating its business and shift those cars away from that area. However, they need a place to put their equipment that's used for the tow yard. And Mr. Schaefer, could you talk a little bit about the equipment that's associated with the towing process?
Yeah, most of it's like trailers. We have a reefer trailer that we use, like if we have to clean up a tractor trailer that rolled over on its side and it's got frozen product in it. We have to transfer that frozen product. And we even had them where, maybe it hit a guardrail and just knocked the trailer wheels out from underneath. We've had to transfer product into to keep a cold storage. As far as I think one time we had plasma, which is very expensive. Blood plasma transferred over to our reefer trailer to keep it cold until the customer could come pick it up. But with that being said, we have numerous. There's a landall trailer that's to take our large equipment out to a scene to be able to offload units off of a trailer or help clean up the scene. Maybe it's an oil spill and ODOT's not available, so we have floor dry trailers. Not several trailers, maybe there's 2 or 3 of them, but it's equipment we use to clean up these roadways, and it's a vital part of our operation.
And then I think the last point that
is it possible, can I ask a quick question on that? Because I think when we saw equipment and truck parking, we were thinking of adverse effects from like tow trucks being parked so close to the single family residences and the beeping and the coming in and coming out and the dust. So is that also where you'd like to park the tow trucks? Because I think we have less of an issue if it's trailers storing goods from cars, and our concern was more the adverse effects from those types of equipment being stored there.
Well, the paved driveway probably would help out tremendously on any type of dust. I'm willing to spend that kind of money for the paved driveway. As far as tow trucks, it's usually just equipment that's parked down there, unless a driver would be down there offloading a vehicle. But there's not a whole lot of trucks that are parked on that property as far as towing. It's just equipment.
Jeff, how many trucks do you have? How many tow trucks do you have?
Well, like I said, I have 28 employees, and we have quite a bit more equipment than we do employees because they're specialty equipment. A lot of our equipment we keep up here on Harrison Avenue at our main office. And if you came through here, you'd really be able to tell the magnitude of the business. But we probably have about 40 trucks altogether.
They're all stored at this facility.
Yeah, 98% of them are up here at our Harrison Avenue lot, or they're out on the road, or the drivers take them home with them there. But most of our equipment, as far as like our forklifts, our telehandler is a large forklift with that extends, the boom extends. That's for getting in the back of these trailers. That's all kept down inside the garage on Dawson. That garage that you see in the center, that's where most of our equipment is stored, other than the large equipment that don't fit inside there, like our trailers. There is a container down there that we have plans on getting rid of this container box that was one of the ones that we towed in from an accident scene. It's been back in that corner, and that's one thing that we're going to go ahead and remove and take to the scrapyard also. But when this all comes to fruition, with putting a paved lot or a driveway and everything, we're planning on disposing of anything that would be in the way.
Mr. Schaefer, when I say tow truck, I imagine the kind of truck that can pull my car, my Corolla, if it breaks down and it goes up on a ramp. Of the, let's say, 38 vehicles that are parked or stored at your property, how many of them consist of that kind of tow truck?
There's probably, as far as that's a flatbed or a rollback, they call that. We probably have about 18 to 20 of those.
And how many of those were you anticipating putting north of that access drive?
If we do, there would only be maybe one or two of those, but we don't keep the whole lot of the trucks down there. I mean, if we're going to keep tow trucks down there, it would only be maybe one or two of them in that area.
So what I'm trying to get at really is, what could you live with that also satisfies the concerns of the city? If you could park one or two of those types of flatbed trucks north of the access drive, and then everything else, it sounds like, is not used constantly, like the storage and these forklifts, would that be something that you could live with?
Yeah, I could live with that. The slats are probably going to create an atmosphere where you can't really see them, with putting in slats all the way around that border that you showed earlier. I don't think, with that being said, that you'll be able to see that too well.
From what you're telling me, it sounds like if there was a condition on using the property north of the access drive that limited the number of flatbed trucks to 2 flatbed trucks, and that your equipment could be stored there, that would be workable for the business. Is that right?
Yeah, the flatbed trailers, the 2 flatbed trailers that we have sit really low, so you can't really see them from outside the fence line. But the reefer trailer, it's a normal size trailer that you see running up and down the road, that we use for cold storage. That would be the only trailer that we'd keep that that would be in that area.
Understood. Okay. Mr. Sturkey, have I been any semblance of clear? Did that make sense with respect to what you're asking for?
So my understanding, just based on the last few minutes of conversation, is that the zoning department has some concerns about the types of vehicles that would be kept or stored to the north of the paved drive. And if there was some uncertainty as to whether the tow trucks themselves would be stored north of the paved drive, because they could have adverse effects for neighboring residents. And you're saying you're okay with not storing any tow trucks in on the north side of the paved drive. Is that right?
I think I think that to add detail to it, it is my understanding and my proposal that if we be limited to 2 flatbed trucks, that if the flatbed trucks are the concerning vehicles for the city, that almost all of those flatbed trucks will not be stored there. I'm hopeful that, fingers crossed, there actually is not too much of a dispute as to how that property will be used, that the equipment that would be used there would be equipment that's not, people won't be reversing and driving it, their flatbed trucks up there because they won't be parked there, that there would be 1 or 2 parked there, something along those lines.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I understand what your position is and what the zoning department's position is. And I'll take that into account. So,
Okay, would you like me to continue on to next
Sure.
topic? Okay.
yeah,
All right, so the last point of issue, I believe, relates to accessing the property. So up until this date, there's been no limitation, or, I mean, this is sort of a zoning anomaly, but the property owner has been using Dawson Avenue exclusively, almost exclusively, to enter and exit the property. There's a concern from the city of Cincinnati with respect to using Dawson Avenue, in that that is necessarily involves the tow trucks driving past a residential district. And so one of the requests that's been made from the city is that Dawson Avenue be no longer used, and that instead Llewellyn Avenue be used exclusively. The property owner has some reservations about using Llewellyn. And Mr. Schaefer, if you could you talk to us a little bit about your concerns with respect to safety and lighting in transferring all of the access to Llewellyn Avenue?
One of my concerns is that it's very poorly lit back there. And I checked with Duke Energy several years ago about having some poles added for electric, and they pretty much flat out told me it's feasible that they wouldn't do it, to be able to put lighting back there. And then the Able Services, which is right around the corner from us, they don't have any lighting on their corner of their building that really sufficiently lights up. There's constantly dumping back there. In fact, we've even cleaned up some of the debris that was dumped at the very end of that street. Then there was a murder back there, probably about, I want to say about 2-3 years ago. Somebody was shot and killed back there, right behind that building that I'm talking about, where the cell tower is. So it's,
so Mr. Schaefer, you're saying that it's not possible, according to Duke Energy, for you to install any type of lighting at the gate.
Yeah, they're pretty much from where the electric stops on Llewellyn to where we would need it back there in that back. They pretty much told me that they wouldn't do it because feasible, that it would be too much for them to run electric back to there. That I checked on that, 4 or 5 years ago, it seems like, and that was their answer, is that they wouldn't do it. Basically, just told me they wouldn't do it. Now, I guess if I had a building back there and didn't have electric to it, they would do it. But feasibly, for the amount of electric it would be using for just lighting, they said they wouldn't do it. But with that respect, that I just think it's a safety concern with, even customers, if they had to come back there and access that. It's a dark alleyway. It's not well lit. I think there's only one maybe residential house on that street. And I think there's crime back there also, and I mean, that's the only thing that scares me about using Llewellyn for our customers' safety and our drivers' safety for that.
But be that as it may, the property owner is proposing to make something that's an in-between standpoint as part of our application. We've requested that Llewellyn be used instead of Dawson between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. That reduces traffic on the Dawson side and allows the concern to the cities to be recognized. That's something we proposed, and I believe that Mr. Munzel offered that customers could still access through Dawson, and for the safety considerations, identified by Mr. Schaefer. I think that would be ideal if someone could access the Dawson Avenue if they're a customer. And as I get to this point, I think it might be helpful if it's acceptable to you, Mr. Sturkey, for us to submit a post-hearing summary of the concessions we would like to make so that it's easier for you to adopt them or consider them when considering the city's proposals. But I think in summary that we are willing to remove the barbed wire, add the curb stops, install the drive aisle and the curb cut. The curb cut was specifically requested as part of the coordinated site review process for safety purposes. Add the buffering was proposed in Mr. Munzel's staff report. And then with respect to the other open items, we are comfortable with limiting the parking north of the access drive with the exception of we would like to store 2 flatbed trucks and other equipment that, as sort of discussed here, customer parking and employee parking, and that we would limit access on Dawson Avenue between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. except for customers and employees. I think that summarizes what our position is, and I think it's I mean, I'm just an attorney, but it seems to me like a considered proposal to satisfy the city in this very unique situation of this poor property owner that is in this zoning sort of quagmire that is from the turn of the century. That I don't believe, I really certainly appreciate the city's positions. I think they've been very helpful and I understand the perspective they're coming for. And so this is our attempt to try to seek a resolution. And if you I have nothing further to present. If there are comments from the city, I would like to perhaps have the opportunity to respond but perhaps I won't have any need to.
Sure. And just to be clear on the use of Dawson, you're proposing that between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. Dawson is used for customer visits. Dawson is used in all other times. Llewellyn is used. So at night, Dawson is used because
I think it's the opposite. So Dawson, because it is, I mean, Llewellyn, if you pull it up on Google Maps, which
yeah, I'm looking.
Llewellyn is pretty much just it's an industrial property. It's not, it's dark. There's barbed wire at some of these adjacent properties. Sorry,
maybe I might have misspoke there. During the nighttime hours, which you proposed 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., Dawson would be used because there's adequate lighting at the entrance to Dawson. Is that right, or are you saying the opposite?
What you're saying is a very logical conclusion to come from the discussion we just had about the safety concerns. We would like the opportunity to use Dawson. Dawson is our preferred choice. However, the city's identified concern is that they don't want to have tow trucks driving by these residences during the nighttime. That's the concern that they've raised. And so looking at all of the factors, we propose that we want to stay away from using the Llewellyn Avenue. However, if we use it during those nighttime hours, then there will not be tow trucks going by the residences. So that satisfies their concerns. And also it limits the number of hours that we're using the Llewellyn so that we're still able to use that access point. And if customers are allowed to go on Dawson at all hours, and the customers are not going to be driving down down Llewellyn Avenue at night.
Got it. Okay. All right. I understand that. Okay. Yeah, let's shift it over to the city, either Wes or Jordan wants to hear something, but anything you'd like to say about the application?
Good morning. I kind of would probably defer to Emily since we kind of worked on the report together, but she, had a little more background and all that, but Emily, do you want to?
Yeah, I can start. I mean, I think our report does lay out a series of recommended conditions. I think we'll acknowledge this is a unique site and a really unique case, and we appreciate the property owner and Sophia working with us through this over the last couple of years. You know, we recognize that this business has been operating there for a very long time. And this whole process started because we did receive a complaint in 2021. It was an anonymous complaint, but it was related to the tow trucks going up and down the residential street. And you know, our inspectors noted the last time they were there in 45 minutes, there were 8 tow trucks going in and out in that span of time down Dawson. So our conditions are really an attempt to recognize, yeah, this use has been operating at this site without substantial adverse effects for a significant period of time, even though it was, according to our interpretation, not legally established there. There have been some concerns expressed recently, and so our recommended conditions are really an attempt to balance that. You know, and we also recognize there is some public interest here as well, as the police impound unit does utilize this business. It's my understanding as part of the city's operations, which is, you know, it's helpful to the city. It is a public benefit. There are very few tow lots within the city. You know, so we recognize that element of the case as well. And so I don't necessarily, unless anyone else does, feel the need to go through one by one on our conditions, but just generally they were an attempt to balance the potential adverse effects, you know, with the needs for the business to continue to operate at the site.
Thanks, everyone. All right, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Holly.
I would say just in one final comment, I appreciate everyone's help on this, and I appreciate everyone's insight. There's no member of the public has showed up to comment on this. Mr. Schaefer, I mean, this is his lifeblood. He's the 4th generation business owner, I believe 3rd generation tow truck. We're just trying to come up with a solution that lets his business operate. No one in the public cared enough to come speak. This was being used as a construction company yard many moons before even the current zoning resolution went into effect. I believe that the city's been very reasonable, and I appreciate all of their help. So I don't want to indicate, I'll leave it at that. I think they're being very reasonable, but we just want to try to find a use that works for the tow yard so they can continue supporting the public. They're putting in so much money into improving this property, like nearly, I mean, well over $60,000 all said and done. So thank you so much. Mr. Shirky, would it be helpful for us to submit a brief summary of the sort of conditions that we submit ourselves to? Would that be helpful to you?
Yeah, I think in light of my inability to
No, it's confusing.
to get them right during the hearing right now, I think that would be helpful. And if you could, yeah, just CC what's. I will make an exception to see if I feel close here and wait until that happens. Wait until I receive that document. I will add that to the case record. And I assume it will just reflect what has already been said in this hearing.
Yes, I think that the only thing that might need some massaging is my the specific language on the restriction of the parking of property to the north of the access drive. And I appreciate and recognize that the city might have a response, but I clearly don't know all of the fancy terms for all that stuff. So I just want to make sure that whatever I'm proposing as a condition, the property owner agrees with it, because these are going to be running with the land, and we want to make sure it's something he could live with, and the city should have a comment on it too. Because it sounds, when I first looked at it, I thought, oh no, we have this dispute. And then once I started talking to Mr. Schaefer, it seemed like, oh, actually, there's not as much of a dispute, but be that as it may, yes, thank you.
Great. All right, anything else, Ms. Holly, in closing or otherwise before we adjourn?
No, thank you so much for your time.
Sure, thank you. And yeah, I tend to agree with you. This is one of the more complex zoning cases that's come in front of me as well. And so thanks to everyone for wading through this, and it's not like your thorough and professional presentation. I appreciate that. I'm gonna take in all the information, try to absorb it all, and make sure that I completely understand the entire request. Before I make a decision, I'll also wait for those conditions to come from you, Ms. Holly. I am inclined to approve this. We'll need to think some more about those conditions and what conditions will apply. I am sympathetic to Mr. Schaefer, particularly considering that he operated this business for 20 years without the city doing anything. We're telling him that it wasn't lawful. That there's just a level of unfairness there that doesn't sit well with me. So, like I said, I am inclined to approve this. I'd like to take a closer look at the conditions, and I appreciate, Mr. Schaefer, your ability to make some investment here to try to mitigate any adverse impacts for neighboring property owners. So, having said all of that, as soon as I do make a decision, I will formalize that in a written opinion that I mentioned at the beginning. Typically takes about 2 weeks. That may be extended a little bit just based on, again, the complexity and still waiting on some materials from Ms. Holly. But as soon as I finish that, I put it into PDF. I think Ms. Holly's familiar with this process, and I email it to everybody who's in the hearing, so you all have a copy of that decision really just moments after it's complete. That will include any conditions of approval and also appeal language if that's something that you can consider. I think that's it. Any questions about the process or anything like that? Okay, great. Well, yeah, thank you all for your time and your testimony here today. You'll hear from me shortly. If you'd like a status update on the decision, or if you have any questions about the process, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to provide you with those updates.
I'd just like to say thanks, Mr. Sturkey, for your time, and Mr. Munzel and Mrs. A. House. I really appreciate your time and trying to get through this.
Thank you. All right. Take care, everyone. We are